Hello! Welcome to Public Poetry, the monthly poetry reading presented by the Houston Public Library and Public Poetry. Today's program will include readings from our featured poets, as well as an open mic session. We'd like to encourage you to visit HPL online at houstonlibrary.org and sign up for our Summer Reading for Grown-Ups program, as well as our youth version, both of which can be found online. Thank you, everyone. And now I'd like to turn it over to Fran Sanders, the founder and director of Public Poetry. Fran?
Hi, everyone. Well, it's a great day today. We've actually got a president that is one, or potentially is one, has the capability of being one, I should say. So I'm in a great mood. I hope you are too. And I want to welcome everybody here to our 10th year of doing this series. I'd like to also remind all of you that we have an annual contest every year, and the one that we did for 2019-20, I guess it spanned both years, was Wicked Wit, and we've produced an anthology, and we pay $1,000 to the winner. So that's coming up on November 21st. You're all very welcome to attend. And that will be a really wonderful reading. We'll be sending out detailed information on the 16th of this month for the reading on the 21st. We've also got another contest going. You can find out about this and everything else on our website, publicpoetry.net. And I also want to add that we would love if you would like to become a member. So thanks very much. And I'm now going to turn it over to Leela Merrill, who is going to introduce our featured poets today.
Hi, everybody. I'm so glad you all can be here. So our first featured poet is Natasha Carrizosa. Natty is both Black and brown, poet and writer. She loves sitting on her back porch, listening to birds, loves reggae music, good people, and good food. Please welcome Natasha Carrizosa.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Public Poetry. Thank you, Fran, and the entire crew for having me, and thank you, Houston Public Library. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I feel like I have some friends. And I'm glad I took myself off of mute because I always forget that. I am going to start by reading a poem that is not mine, but it was written for me by my mother. It's called Roots and Culture. My father was dark like Africa. Mom was a breed, Creole and Black Chinese. Grandma Zaydia, her mother was born in 1900. Trinidad bore her grandfather. Great-grandma Azaline had a massa. So did grandmother Gaitha. Pop taught me how to read literature, the Quran and the Bible. Mama taught me how to wield an axe, hunt fish, and track my dinner. Each one spoke a different tongue. My heritage I teach myself. To speak in the language of my forefathers, Swahili, Patois, and Dingala. Always in constant search for my roots and culture. Tesoros para mi hija. Keepsakes in the hope chest, treasures for my only daughter. It's written by a poet named Samir, who just happens to be my mother. The next poem I'm going to read is from this book called Contra. Shout out to Chibi and Rooster in San Antonio who put this together. This poem is called Today I Will Begin Again. As the seed, shadow sown, enveloped in uncertainty, submerged in dreams deferred, whispering, wandering, am I? I am. My mother is lion, earth, my father, bee feather on the lamb unheard. Either way I turn or run, I am plume of my makers. It is written, I will begin again. I must have faith. I am destined for greatness. Today, I will begin again to remember myself, to grow beyond the glass ceiling of disbelief, of trauma, of self-doubt, of negative thoughts, of the cannot, of the impossibilities, of the atrocious, of the atrophy. It is written, I will begin again. I must prune my own weeds. I am destined for greatness. Today, I will begin again, growing slowly, knowing, seeking, moving mountains, unfolding truth, unfinished creation, pressing forward. First King something, crowning is everything. I am destined for greatness. Today, I will begin again, becoming, be patient, be loving, be sun, bathing, be music, listening, be bird watching, be smoke, praying, be humble, 817 bumblebee sting, remembering, be still my beating heart, be no longer suffering, sacrificing, sanctimonious. Today, I will begin again. I am just seed, kin to cloud, kneeling, begging sun for a way out. I must hold on. I must be mustard seed. I am small, thought. I am better now. I am reaching out. I might be poetry. I am grounded. I am destined for greatness. Today, I will begin again, breathing, speaking, remembering the language of my heart. Today, I will begin again. I am destined for greatness. It is written. Thank you for that. Is that my time? Okay. This is called, oh, this is from my book. This is called Fiend. I'm always looking for signs. I think it is because I am often lost or feel that way. I think it is because my heart beat, be rabbit foot, my nose stay to grindstone, or whatever they say. I think it is because I am walking cliche, my pencil lead body come up more short than sharp, my fishing soul pole catch more marlin than shark. And sometimes God eat me my words up when I go fishing in the dark. I am Santiago, always earnest, looking for Manolin for his way, Hemingway signs. You know, sometimes I am more old man than sea, sitting on porch, boat, struggling between, making sense, writing, insert mandolin strings. And the greatest catch of my life, breathing. You know, sometimes I get gone, lost at sea, and I drown 100 fathoms down deep in the water of my mind where nobody can catch me. Fiend. Thank you.
Thank you. So if we were in person, we would be clapping and snapping our fingers, and you're certainly welcome to do that, but we can't hear you. On Zoom, there is a function where you can do the clap hands. You can also hit the little button that's a heart. So I encourage all of you to show our poets all your love and appreciation because they're awesome. Our next featured poet is Matthew Riley. He is a poet and library director. His poems have appeared in many anthologies in the last few years. His most recent poems have been in Enchantment of the Ordinary from Mutabilis Press, Weaving the Terrain from Dos Gatos Press, and the Ekphrastic Review. He was a juried poet at the 2016 and 2019 Houston Poetry Festivals and has been invited to read at bookstores, libraries, and cultural centers around the Houston area. Please welcome Matthew Riley.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Fran, Leela, Public Poetry, Houston Public Library, everyone. Thank you for the invitation to read today. I'm going to be reading some poems from a proof copy of my first collection of poems called Late Blooms for Laughing Ghosts. So once again, I'm honored to be here. The first poem is called Waiting in Utopia, Boyhood. Utopia is actually the place Utopia, Texas, and also the idea of a utopia serves as both. Waiting in Utopia. This lovely girl giggles up a storm, more giggling than waiting on tourists up from the river, down from the hills. A wonderful sight to see this lovely girl giggle with pitchers of tea to serve moms and dads, grandma and her fussy kin, young men and ranchers out of pickups just killing time. And then night descends and the last tables fill in with tourists out in the sun for too long. And the stars slowly come on. And this lovely girl still giggles in Utopia, Lost Maples Cafe. My dad leaves a tip. I leave another piece of me that begs to stay. Thank you. My next poem is called Cartoon Coma. This poem was published in Mutabilis Press, Enchantment of the Ordinary. For those of you who are my age or older, you know that we spent our childhoods with more time to daydream, and I think that's where this poem comes from. Cartoon Coma. I left the webs alone for months. Wild animals run loose in the attic. I lie in bed and listen. My double walks through a door into a simultaneous world and sits on a different day. A spider descends and coils him into a cocoon. Wild animals raise him into an attic. A TV with no screen transmits 28,000 lost days into an exact moment in time. My double watches through a fine silken gauze. The emperor laughs and slams his fist into a bowl of blue jelly beans. Each bean takes 2 Earth years to reach the floor. I left the webs alone for months. Each of my multiples a simulacrum, losing dimension out and beyond our horizon of misplaced happiness. Thank you. Let's see, so I'm going to now read a poem called This Other Life. This Other Life. My life was hidden among the others, 100 moons around a distant star. I grew tired and pulled up the covers and slept and dreamed and slept some more and gained a few pounds and became, at last, a heavy bore. My life was quick and ran off with another who became a doctor, athlete, and a great lover. Some would say wise and a natural leader too. And I became this with a hole for each shoe and spun my desire around that distant star and hid myself in the local bar and put my mind to perpetual test the pros and cons of whose life is best. Thank you. Maybe one more quick one, if that's all right. This one is called Hollow Bones. This one was published in the Austin International Poetry Anthology from a few years back. Hollow Bones. Old men know the growing distance of your subtle mechanics when letting go found words on wings. When the lift and drag of a manic heart sent sirens through their languid compositions, the detritus of home around the ashen hearth. They feel it in their hands like rosebuds in the Sahara, like seeing their own faces in a dream half remembered. They say, I will weep for wisdom from the wheeled throne with arm bled and eyes to stone. I will sign my name song on the hollow bones of your mended hawk and send him north toward your darkening skies, hounding the lowlands as he flies. They feel hard time in the lines of their jurisdiction, the lines they crafted as artists of industry, the marks and numbers bled dry as the deep lines on their thin, parched skin. Thank you.
Thank you. Bravo. So our next poet is Carolyn Dahl. Carolyn Dahl is the 2020 winner of the Poetry of the Plains and Prairies Mary's chapbook contest for A Muddy Kind of Love, which will be published by North Dakota State University. Her 2019 chapbook, Art Preserves What Can't Be Saved, was the first place winner in both the National Federation of Press Women's Communication Contest and the Press Women of Texas's contest, the chapbook division, and also received an honorable mention in the Eric Hoffer Book Awards. Please welcome Carolyn Dahl.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here also. And I also want to thank all the people that have tuned in today, because this is kind of a really dramatic day and a lot of people could be popping corks or celebrating, but they've chosen to come for poetry. So thank you very much. Now that I'm isolating and I can't travel, I'm thinking about travel a great deal. So the other day I made a little list. And I listed all the places that I had traveled in the world, and then all the places that I had traveled in the United States, not where I was teaching in a conference where I was in a hotel all week, but when I was actually on vacation and exploring the area. And I looked at it and I thought to myself, oh, I hope this isn't it. I hope that there will be more. So that question, when I was thinking about travel, led me to think about some of the poems that I've written about some of the experiences I've had while traveling. So I want to read one from my chapbook, Art Preserves What Can't Be Saved. And it's a poem about Mexico, back when you could travel in a lot different way than now. It's called All Night Bus. With a push and a shove, I board the dirty dented bus. It lurches forward, jerks the roof riders clutching racks and bleeding goats. In a seat for two, three of us squeeze. Sandwiched in the middle, I press against the aisle sitter's body, half of which balances on a sliver of seat, the other half suspends over the air of the aisle, held in place by the push of another body from across the gap. Caught in a bridge, the two men levitate like magicians over the abyss, conjuring seats where none exist. Daylight disappears into smudges, flares briefly in fractured window cracks, confusing the rooster who crows beneath a man's serape. Sometimes we skid to a stop in the desert's nowhere, drop a family into shadows, their goat leading the way home through starlight and scorpions. Shouldn't I be afraid? Saguaros rise from the dark, thick arms raised like bandits who might be real. I am a woman alone. I know no Spanish, riding with strangers and a driver high on peyote, in a rickety bus leaking carbon monoxide. Yet what I feel is peace. I trust the dusty Madonna pasted to the bus wall, her hand raised in perpetual blessing. I find comfort in fussing babies under mother's rebozos, smelling tortillas, the soft breaths of the aisle sitter whose head has nodded onto my shoulder. I have the luxury of choice. Yet I chose this box of souls, rattling over rock-studded roads, on patched tires and rusted axles. I don't sleep, but watch the driver's rosary swing from the broken mirror. I hold my place in this moment, like the aisle sitters hold each other over the abyss until morning. One of the things that I think also about the pandemic that is perhaps one of the positive things, if I'm looking for something out of that situation, is the return of people making their own music with their bodies. We've seen the return of singing all around the world. And I think that that is really a very plus, because I know sometimes when I'm upset, I go to this website or the YouTube where the Italians are singing on their balconies. I don't know if you've heard that, but it's just one of the most marvelous things. And every time I hear it, I think to myself, yes, there is such a soothing quality in the sound of human voices singing all together. So this poem is kind of a music poem. Treetop Tenor. Singing his arias from the top of a red bud tree like a tenor hoping to shatter glass. I unplug my earphones and listen to his mockingbird riff, a blue jay, cardinal, woodpecker stutter. The way he struts his songs, though hawks circle nearby, makes me wonder, when did I lose the courage to sing? I remember warbling in front of an old piano, plinking the ivories, pumping my lungs to natural woman, delirious with notes and reasons to sing. When did I grow silent? Believe music no longer requires a throat. The gray bird doesn't peck an app, nor download the top 10 avian tunes, though he is a Napster of bird songs. When he rewinds his songbook memory and without changing feathers, trills an Oreo, I shape my soft lips to the point of a beak and find my voice again behind my teeth and scat sing with the bird. My husband rushes from the house, binoculars dangling from his neck, and searches the tree for a strange new bird he's never heard. I think that when we are children, our mothers know our bodies very well. And I think that's natural, because after all, our mothers made our bodies. So we're sort of like, I think of it as like being a chunk of our mother, almost like an organ that lives outside of her body. But we rarely know our mother's bodies. But sometimes in the aging process, that balance kind of shifts. And whether we desire it or not, we might have this happen to us. Unfastened. Standing a few feet from the bathroom door, she does not know if she should cry or what she should think or what should be said or not said about her mother's nude body. So she simply stands and looks, half amazed, half ashamed. Could this be the final gift? To show the body in which she grew, anchored like a lily in a pond until the stem was cut, the knot tied, the mark of a mother's love, a scar like none other. Her mother lets her stare unnoticed because somehow a child is no longer a part of her world, no longer what counts. Unlike the smiling nurses who have come to give her a bath and move her politely aside, the daughter no longer needed. Thank you.
Thank you. That is beautiful. Thank you, Carolyn. Our next featured poet is Michael Safranco. He is a poet, writer, and editor. He teaches creative writing and English at Houston Community College. Safranco founded and advises the HCC student organization Voices Without Borders. For 18 summers, he also led creative writing classes at Cambridge University in England as part of the Oxbridge Academic Program. There he served as Dean of Faculty. Michael earned his MFA at the University of Iowa's Creative Writing Program. His work has appeared in dozens of journals, and his full-length collection, American Sign, received the Antonio Machado Prize in Poetry. Please welcome Michael Sirfranco.
Thank you very much. It occurs to me that every year that I get older, if I read and get introduced, it begins to sound more like a eulogy and less like an introduction. It's kind of unnerving. But I want to thank, first of all, the Houston Public Library for their participation in this series and support for it. And I lived in Houston at a time, some 35 years ago, when there wasn't a public presence of poetry that was unified in any way. The university and the city were quite separated. And I know that Fran Sanders and Robert Clark and John Corman and Tony Holland and Rich Levy and hosts of other people were responsible for bringing about the connection between Houston poets and writers and the community at large that we have today. And I just want to acknowledge the tremendous sense of gratitude that I have for them. People often say, well, where do you get ideas for poems? And for me, poems don't usually come as ideas. Occasionally they do. I remember reading an essay years ago by Robert Creeley called, "Is This a Real Poem or Did You Just Make It Up?" And poems come to me through rhythm and through sound. And I love some of the sound that we heard. I love what Carolyn had to say about singing. This poem then is called, "How Does the Verse I Love the Best Begin?" Billy was squinting behind the wheel. I was trying to sing myself sober. At midnight, we stopped at the edge of the desert. Diving bats fed in the headlights. There we stood inside the darting wings and shrieks, and rearing back, threw all our keys into a river at the bottom of a deep ravine. Where does the past finally disappear but into the dark, I whispered, and stood there as if expecting an answer. Whatever we were trying to heal, whatever was behind us, deep in the water at the border between two states, I can't remember. But for miles, I stared into the bright knobs and the glowing dials of the Delco. Tonight, I can almost hear it again, the voice inside the static. What was the name of that bootleg tape? The one I lip-synced when I didn't really know the words. All night, the lost lyrics crawl home in the dark to me. Recently, I got interested in the idea of writing longer poems in little sections. And I have to say that the inspiration for this poem came from a kind of unusual place. It came from a poet named James Tate, whose work you might know. Most of the time, he's kind of funny and frivolous, but he had a poem that was called The Museum of Animated Nature. And it began, you think you are going to work, but you're going to the cemetery. And it was just a kind of depressing idea that it appeals to me. So this is called Stammers at the Exhibition. It's in 5 parts. Today's reading is from the Gospel according to Saint Everyone. We know how easily he disappears. And the Corn King hasn't shown his face around here since like forever. 2. The newspaper's puzzle is full of blank spaces. The theme is redemption. I'm in the kitchen pulling spoiled fruit from a cellophane box, saving what's left of the firm, fresh blackberries. When I was a boy, I dreamed I would save Paula Yurchek if the A-bomb ever fell on Milltown. Now, I'm a bald man with colorful birds flying on my brightly printed shirt. 3. I was awake all night worrying about the hurricane, the streets full of water, wind, and branches. While everyone else was sleeping, loneliness drove me to the movies. If you keep him company long enough, you wind up paying for everything. 4. When a drunk man screams, "Shit," he doesn't think anyone hears him, but the flies do. Have you noticed? No matter how many times you silence the shadows, they never stop texting you. 5. Emerson once said, "The sky is the daily bread of the eyes." Well, it's sunset behind the refineries. Oh, great God of irony, why is the poisonous sky so beautiful? And I'll close with a little short poem called Meditation Outside the Rothko Chapel. It's a little Zen Jungian bit that I wrote for a dear friend, James Hollis, who used to run the Jung Center here and now is in Washington, D.C. Even the wild horses have no idea where they are going. You can't glimpse the future in their glassy black eyes. Everything the sky is given, the clouds deliver. And if I wait until they no longer change into faces or familiar shapes, my shadow evaporates. Nothing is spoken, and the wind that shuffles the dust does not move me. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. So now we are in the middle of our program and it's time for the open mic. So we will take volunteers through the chat function and also through the raise hand function. I promise I'll get to everybody who volunteers, but only one poem per customer. Let's see who I've got in the chat. Let's see. So our first volunteer is Patricia McMahon. Patricia, you ready?
Getting there.
I'd just like to mention before you begin, Patricia, you know, we hardly see each other that much anymore, and it would be great if all of you guys would just turn on your videos so at least we can be together and see one another during this time. I mean, obviously, if you don't want to, you don't have to, but it would be nice. Thanks. Take it over, Patricia.
Hang on. I'm doing something really wrong and I don't know what it is. Okay. I'm in red light. I'm in red light. I know not why. All right. Even though I am one of the people who are very happy today, I thought I would read a poem that's not so happy, but is related to the reason why I am. This is called Lines Written Outside the COVID ICU. To the memory of Mary McMahon, died June 20, 2020. The Union buried their dead soldiers at the foot of Robert E. Lee's home. Years since his word to his children, I raised you here, for this is our dearest place, Arlington. He brought the war to the country, so they brought the young dead to his door. Private William Christensen, 21 years old, a farmer from Pennsylvania, was first laid to rest. No preacher said his name in prayer. No bugle sounded a farewell. And that is as it is now in the city where they raised me. In New York, a cousin drives from funeral home to funeral home, seeking some place and some time for the burial of the aunt and the uncle, both gone. He goes on and on, no luck. No one sits with the bodies. No one keens at the end of the coffin. There are not enough coffins. In the backyard behind the apartment, the men have not built a fire in a barrel. There is no drink and no stories. Not the ones always told at a wake. Not the ones saying why we so loved the dead. My sister lies in a hospital bed, still so ill, barely alive. The man who looks dressed for space, a kind man, says, "You are not getting her back." As grown up as is possible, she is still my little sister. And so I know what I will do when she is gone. I will carry her to the steps of that other man's house, the one who dithered, the one who counted dollars, not the dead. I will bring my dead to his door so he can see what he has done. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. So next up, I'd like to have Stuart, followed by Scott and Pravadri. Stuart?
Great. Yes. Thank you. Good to be here with everybody. I've kind of been discovering Bukowski. So Charles Bukowski, the trash men. Here they come. These guys, gray truck, radio playing. They are in a hurry. It's quite exciting. Shirt open, bellies hanging out. They run out the trash bins, roll them out to the forklift, and then the truck grinds it upward with far too much sound. They had to fill out application forms to get these jobs. They are paying for homes and drive late model cars. They get drunk on Saturday night. Now in the Los Angeles sunshine, they run back and forth with their trash bins. All that trash goes somewhere, and they shout to each other. Then they are all up in the truck, driving west toward the sea. None of them know that I am alive. Rex Disposal Co. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Kalupa, you ready?
I am. Thanks to all the readers. You were fantastic. Can't wait for round 2.
I can't see you at the moment. Are you okay with your video on?
Is my video not on?
There you are. Hello.
Okay, there we go. All right. My brain sometimes doesn't work right. So again, thanks to all the readers. I'm not quite sure what I'm calling this thing yet. It's part of a series of like different things that I'm working on. A life after a life after a life after, a cherrywood cortege cavalcades past a parson unborn again. To step out from old boots onto bare ground opens us into afterlife. To breathe beyond any arbitrary moment in a life is an afterlife, isn't it? We've been here before, just then and there, husking eons by the hour to leave behind what we have yet to square, what we must always carry with us. A broken toe, a threshold to afterlife. Post-orgasmic sleep is afterlife after a fashion, no? The bar against heavens once set so high that all life withered before the before, our lives wasted on thoughtless anticipation. An antedated antidote for never here and never now. The hoped for heaven were never there in a pinch, a foxhole promise only half delivered until ere now. But heaven could be here, now, here, yes, here. A clockwork door sprung ajar and tolling its come hither cocked brow antechamber, always opening to another after living, after all our lives undreamt, fashioned after an ever unfolding field of window panes, wind blown open by ebullient gales blowing apart the promise of heaven to reveal heaven. Oh God, it was always, wasn't it? Always, yes, it was always meant to be like this.
Next up, if technology works with us, I'd like to have Pravadri, followed by Brian, and then Amanda.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Am I audible? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you could be a little louder.
Okay. Now is it all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, we are here in India, in Calcutta, so it's a festive move for us. Like Durga Puja has just ended, so I have dedicated a poem to Durga Puja and I've named it Festival. So I'll read that out today. Although it's different this year, although we can't see it very clear, our heart throbs in its place when Ma enters the pandal with grace. With her she brings along millions of bright faces, enlightened just like Howrah Bridge inside. The holy waters of Ganga reflect the lights that destroy the gloom from the face of the city of joy. Through the pitch-dark lanes where blood runs golden veins, you reach to a world where you smell the same gold of the marvelous hot drink, the coffee house in a blink. Land down from a train and you're stuck in a traffic jam, but then Ma leads you through and you give your eyes to the College Street, the universe of books. Hey, put on the lights and twist the volume button right. Ore, jore dhak baja. Well, it's our Durga Puja. Thank you.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you. Next up, could we hear from Brian? And then after Amanda, and would anyone else like to volunteer? Just let us know in the chat or using the raise hand function. Hey,
Hi.
Brian.
Thanks everybody. This is called Anything Helps. Being homeless sucks. But then again, according to a recent survey, most Americans would quit their jobs if they could. In the restaurant of life, where diners served what we didn't order, suffering with a side order of pain. For dessert, regret. I'd rather be smoking a cigar in my claw-tooth bathtub or staring at art in my private collection. 19th century American, the people insignificant figures in the cathedral of nature. I've never seen the outdoors like that, but on the back of this Anything Helps sign, I made a gestural drawing of that live oak in the bank parking lot. If Cy Twombly can scribble his way to an Italian villa, why not me? To be fair, I've had my days of glory. In a previous life, I was Andrew Jackson, I'm ashamed to say. Nothing to do about it now, but work out my karma for uprooting entire peoples. I think that's how it works. I used to have a smartphone. A person can get a world-class education on the internet today. Got a 20? Let me see myself. When I was proud and ignorant. Once I had a home, but it got holes in it, and the wind blew through. This city saved my life. There are no bridges high enough to jump from. Do you feel that? Seismographic activity at the bottom of an ocean. I don't know which one. Once in Dublin, I strolled past Bono's restaurant where he was dining with his wife. I can sing falsetto like him. I care about systemic oppression like him. Only difference is things worked out for him. Could you spare $100,000? I want to buy a law degree, to sue God, not to win, but just to hear her speak.
Thank you. Next up, could we hear from Amanda, followed by Chris Gorman?
Hi, y'all. I hope you're having a nice day. My name is actually Amanda Lopez. I just haven't figured out how to change it on this phone quite yet. And I have a poem that's possibly untitled, but we're going to call it Reckoning today. Okay. I put my prayer in the water and hoped that God and Gaia would read it. I set fire to their plants but hated the smell. I walked for serenity and solitude but could not explain the serendipitous ache within my blood-pumping veins, my body-wrecking soul. The future is a horrendous privilege and I did not expect to earn it. So I put my toes to the soil and hoped Mother Earth would eat them as if they were an offering for every mortal error and crime that raped her beauty. Concrete prostitutes, dead trees for profit, my time for your profit, my time until life stops and my drive found a different stop. And when did I wake up and have a teenager? When did my hair turn gray? When did we forget that our purpose is to love? Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Gorman?
Hi. I was trying to think about what to do for Thanksgiving. I work in medical, so I'm not going to go to a Friendsgiving because I don't want to get my friends sick, and I don't eat turkey. I'm a vegetarian. So I went on Etsy and I decided to support someone that's making really expensive Thanksgiving cards. I've never in my life sent a card. I am emotional, but not sentimental. So I was trying to figure out what to put in the card aside from like, hey, thanks, because this year I've had a lot of really big life events and people were really kind to me in an unexpected way, at least to me. So I went looking for a Thanksgiving poem that maybe I could take a little piece of and put in the card. And y'all probably already know this poem. I slept on it. I've never heard it. I'm going to try to read it. It's in my email. Just a minute. I have to go get it. Hang on a second. Okay. It's by Pablo Neruda. Again, I slept on this poem. I didn't know it. It's called Ode to Thanks. Thanks to the word that says thanks. Thanks to thanks. Word that melts iron and snow. The world is a threatening place until thanks makes the rounds. From one pair of lips to another, soft as a bright feather, and sweet as a petal of sugar, filling the mouth with its sound, or else a mumbled whisper. Life becomes human again. It's no longer an open window. A bit of brightness strikes into the forest and we can sing again beneath the leaves. Thanks, you're the medicine we take to save us from that bite of scorn. Your light brightens the altar of harshness, or maybe a tapestry known to far distant peoples. Travelers fan out into the wilds, and in the jungle of strangers, merci rings out, while the hustling train changes countries, sweeping away borders, then spasibo, clinging to pointy volcanoes, to fire and freezing cold, or danka, yes, and gracias, and the world turns into a table. A single word has wiped it clean. Plates and glasses gleam, silverware tinkles, and the tablecloth is as broad as a plane. Thank you, thanks, for going out and returning, for rising up and settling down. We know, thanks, that you don't fill every space. You're only a word, but where your little petal appears, the daggers of pride take cover, and there's a penny's worth of smiles. So happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you. Thank you for reading. So without any other volunteers? No? Okay. All right. That's been another excellent open mic. And now we'll welcome back our featured poets. First up is Natasha Carrizosa.
Sorry, I was just leaning back enjoying the show. Thank you, poets. This has been really wonderful. I loved everything that I heard. excuse me. This is called Crawling Down Deep. It's in a collection of poems I have called Blue in the Face, where I listen to old blues music and I write in a language that, yeah, you'll hear it. I want to crawl down a sound so deep down I get lost in a blues man throat. I'm talking about standing in the middle of old man winter without no coat. I need to feel what it means to be covered by snow. In a time so cold, all I can do is rock back till I roll till my soul can't take no more. I want to crawl down a hole dug so deep I fall asleep on the guitar strings. Pick like my people pick cotton. Black fingers beating down some red hot hell with blues in their belly and God in their mouth. I'm talking about ain't no way out but to sing till it rain fire from the sky. Lord, I want to crawl down way down past them dusty hymn books under that wood church pew while preacher man be telling them how they should act and what to do. I just want to drink some old shine while you set fire to the roof. I want to crawl down deep inside a drop of rain because I feel like hell. I'm going to ask that piece of water if it had got a father, how he look, how he smell. And I'm going to sit there like I'm sitting in a Jesus swing till it give me the blues and till that water tell me everything. This is called Waiting to Drown. I used to be a Girl Scout and we used to sing this song, The Ants Go Marching One by One, hurrah, hurrah. So, music is always in my head. Waiting to drown, down, 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 to get out of the rain. Sap slowly walks out of my oak tree eyes, leaving a trail of syrup for the ants. The blind ones go marching one by one, hurrah, hurrah. Here we are, ant and queen of the big hill by the fence. We are not aware of how small we are until it rains. Everything made by God is mighty. We are not waiting to drown. We are living our lives in constant search of the divinity within. We are like fire when we come together. Though we be blind, we never lose our way. There's always a trail of sweet sorrow in front of us left by those ahead. Faith is a thing made of wing and sting. Who told the ant she could fly? How does a creature so small make a giant fall? Alone, I am an army. I have warred with the rain and swallowed lightning. I have lassoed thunder. I am the water, always rising. I am not waiting to drown. Hurrah, hurrah. This one is called Autobiography. My name is Natasha Marie Berber Carrizosa, by way of Duran, soon to be Drayden. They say my great-grandmother, Zaydia Marie, grew black roses on the side of her house. My grandfather said he only looked her in the eye once. He was a cold black giant who found my grandmother, Florine Marie, a beautiful bloom, wild in the garden. He had to have her, to have my mother, Elaine Marie, a goddess from child. She spoke the language of ancients and had orchids for eyes. I come from fire and forest on my mother's side. They say my grandfather, Jose Berber Lopez, serenaded my grandmother, Natalia Carrizosa, until she turned into a poem and gave birth to a painting, my father, Francisco. A work of art, a library of a man. His silence speaks volumes. He has sonnets for hands and paintbrushes for eyes. I come from poems and paintings on my father's side. My daddy, Ernesto Duran, they called him calote, meaning cornstalk, a giant, the color of maize, a maze of a man, amazing man who swayed under sun, whistling while mixing dreams and chicle, meaning tar, meaning prieta, dark-skinned woman, meaning my mother. He met her while she played in mud with me and my brother. I come from midnight and meaning on my daddy's side. My husband Charles, meaning King, Lamar, meaning of the sea, loves the goddess of mud in me. His story looks like my history, paintings and poetry, fire and oak tree, the book of John, the seed of Dati. I am sure he loves me because I remind him of his mother. He reminds me of my fathers. We are all natives called by love, and the children come from his dreams. My name is Natasha. I unravel myself in poems, expose my roots and truth for myself in seeds, for the reader to see the forest through the trees, the midnight and meaning, the love and life, the beauty and blessing that is we. I come from you, and you come from me. See? Thank you.
Thank you. Love that. Our next featured poet is Matthew Riley.
Okay, can y'all hear me? Y'all can hear me? Okay. All right, great. Thank you. Everything's been amazing so far. It's a pleasure to hear everyone's poems. This first poem, I think the best way to understand it is imagine yourself at a work meeting that you don't particularly want to be in. You drift off to sleep and your dream becomes the meeting. That might be the best way to understand this. It's called Meeting of the Planned Unit Development Team. We wait on the great voice to rise above the din, confetti in the stage hands bin. Rise above the waving hands of sinking men in amusement park aquariums. Or even if the great voice would just once descend below the blood-stained linoleum to subterranean camps of insect men, anything it would say, but these little flower cups in lifeless pud-shaped medians. Thank you. The next poem is called Between. Let's see, a little further down. Okay, Between. Between hellos, heaven shorts and cascades of aureola clouds. Between hellos, the fasting mechanic disappears into the automaton with his dream of simple respiration. Between hellos, the lame crawls into the shadow of the killer's hiding. Between hellos, the steel-toed hunter crushes the jaw of the beast, his heart. Between hellos, the cook prepares the meat of his own poisoning. Between hellos, the hapless victim awaits his perpetrator's resurrection. Do you ever think of him between hellos, endlessly awaiting orbital resonance? Do you ever think of him? Do you know that joy and pleasure playfully languish at the gates of his heroic and endless silence? Thank you. That's Between. The next poem is called Folk Tale. This probably would have been better prior to Halloween. It's, I guess you could say, a modern retelling of a folk tale. She walks through prairie where tall grasses sway in dappled sunlight, her dress dragging burrs and needles. Again, the great mystery is a forest, huddled in cave light, bird shadow, black magic, more dark matter. A gap in the tree line becomes a mouth, a conveyor to her other half, a conveyor which exits forest through an eye. Is this where traces end and the whispering ghost finds a face? She settles at the periphery. Sun falls and the dark of herself engulfs her defenses. She could have entered when sunlight left stepping stones along the undergrowth. The snarl of limb and brush had parted in a sort of homecoming. Now she must enter unwelcome, eyes unaccustomed to the mechanisms moving inside. Her mother hums a melody in the kitchen of her childhood, and she steps into darkness without fear. Because now she knows this is not just science, not just numbers in the theorem of night, but the spirit of teeth and the gnashing and the blood and the light. Thank you. That's Folktale. The next poem is called No Magic. As you can see, my poems are a little on the surreal side. This is another kind of celebration of surrealism, of irrationality. No magic, said Peter to the Duke. There's no magic in the way you say it, plodding and plodding through off-white days. Still, it intrigues me, so full of meaning. But don't bother explaining. My head a bed of snail trails, abstract repetitions, a cafe of retired magicians pulling cocktails out of memories too dim to comprehend. But I must say, your trademark flays our moon by storm and fire. Your arm of coats entertains our mass by stone and spire. While the Duchess of Towers and I fly from crumbling castles in the sky till the end of days, hooray, hooray. Thank you. One more and I'll be done. It's called Who for These Growing Poems. Anyone who writes poems in hopes that the poems are received well, that's really what this poem is about. Who for these growing poems? Little mishappen geometries of my mind's meaning, I name you and house you in compartments on the universal bus. We drive to the park of creativity, fertile or barren fields of skeletal conjecture, feasts for the eye orbit or fibrillating fascination of the heart's haunted key. A single father whose children have outgrown their home. How can I find the proper guardian for you all, with minds of understanding, who allow you to fall and still encourage you onward? Thank you. It was a pleasure being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our final featured poet for today is Michael Safranco.
Did we lose Carolyn? Layla?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know. Sorry, never mind. We're not there yet.
All right, Michael.
Wrapped up.
Hi, Carolyn.
Yes, so welcome back, Carolyn Dahl.
Sometimes I think for every poet, you will get a poem and you'll go kind of like, where did this come from? This doesn't feel like me. You know, the tone is different, the words are different, and there are some phrases in it that you don't even understand. And I had this one poem come to me, and I think it's come out of the chaotic environment that we're in, because it seems like the poem is kind of chaotic with a lot of different things. But the message behind it, I think, was my feeling of, oh, please, couldn't we have some kind of rescuer come to our aid and take care of the panic, take care of the chaos, take care of everything? And of course, the ending is that there are no rescuers other than ourselves. But I'm going to read this poem to you, even though I find it kind of strange and I don't understand parts of it either. But I thought if I read it to you, I will sort of get it out of me because I don't know what to do with it. And I will put it into the air and then it'll kind of go on its own way. So you're kind of guinea pigs today for this poem. It's called Rescuers. Gather at all man's door, red, white, and desperate blue. The opening to freedom is drifting 10 poles past a meteorite. Let us prove our vehemence now and call for the force of Yoda, the abracadabra of poets, the timing of jugglers spinning distant planets. Speak now. Do not be a rock dreaming a voice. The duration of history is not ours. Our days are already weighted with accumulations and vans of marred darlings. Ignore the enunciations of generals and droning politicians. Their fables are only digested gold in the giblets of the poor. Sinuous as fish, we can elude the men with taxidermist eyes who offer false promises on shining hooks. Together let us swim the river of lies to truth's cauldron and boil the chicken of injustice. Before the mourners descend, we will hold a feather to God's dog, diligent with bite and duration. Tickle miracles and tenderness from its belly until sorrows crumble to ponderable fuzz. Yes, we may only be piccolos of valor or tiny fleas jumping on the body of the future. But if we do not fly like angels into the fissures of hard hearts, how will we bring the hour of consolations to the mothers of despondency? How will we repair the errors, return our faces to sparkling mirrors, become the maestros of our own consciousness again? When I was a really young child, I believed that I owned the moon, that it was mine. I don't know if I thought the moon only existed in my eye and no one else could see it, but it was somewhat of a shock as I grew older to discover that everybody could see that moon, and it really belonged to everyone, from the time of the Egyptians who admired it, or Beethoven probably composed under it, Anne Sexton made poems. This is the very same moon that we are sharing through all of history. But we only have one, and we don't have 12, like say Jupiter. We have no spares. And so I've always been very protective of the moon. And I always feel like, oh, please, countries, will you please leave our pristine, beautiful little nightlight alone? So this is my poem, One Moon. Today, America shot the moon. Rule over our seas and cycles, so target-like to gunslingers like us. It was only a little probe, the scientists said. The impact small, the risk ours to take. We need to know if there is ice and water. On-site supplies could lighten the rocket's load. Tourists could bring home more souvenir rocks. After the debris cleared television screens, the man's face wore a new blemish. And in the silence, we could hear the satellites of our world turn, lock and load. Many of my friends have been writing excellent pandemic poems, getting them published in prestigious journals. I have felt very numb, as if my words have been somewhat traumatized around the topics of what's going on in the world. And I have not been very productive as far as pandemic poetry. But one day I said something to my husband, and then I thought, you know what? I could write a poem about this. And so I guess I would say this is my one pandemic poem. And I would say basically that it's a Corona love poem. You are the one human being I can touch. I tell him, and grab an arm, twirl into the curve of the elbow, roll into the warmth of his chest. I place both palms twin stethoscopes of sense on the rise of muscles, probe for the comfort of pulse from a heart I tell him is mine alone. When he laughs, throws back his head, I slip under his chin, fit into a space undiscovered before. With his jawbone on the shelf of my skull, I ask him to say his name slowly. I want to feel the moment he begins is sound, rises up the throat, overpowers the flamboyance of tongue, and catches in the curiosity of ears. Strange sculptures of the head, bone forgotten, newly magical. My fingers trace their curled flesh down to the pads of his lobes, soft buttons. I want to press, as if I could open the movies in his eyes and see everything he has seen. At night, as the digital clock slaps down another day of isolation, my toes seek the hollows of his feet, vacancies I believe I was meant to fulfill. Connected like roots, I kiss his lips, fall asleep, tasting the wine from the bottle we had saved for our most glorious futures. Thank you. Now, Michael, you can go.
Go right ahead.
I knew you were there somewhere, Carolyn. Yeah, before I read these last couple of poems, I just want to acknowledge, I saw that Robin Riegler was here, and talk about people who have made a difference in bringing poetry out into the community. I mean, thank you so much, Robin, for all of your work. You've just been an inspiration to so many young people and so many people at U of H and other places. I had a conversation some time ago with a friend of mine, a poet, Andre de Corvin, who I haven't seen since the pandemic began. I miss him very much. And he asked me if, we asked each other if we had regrets about anything. And I said that although I loved the fact that I grew up in the 60s and 70s and was a child of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, there was a part of my life that I felt a bit like I might have wasted. And so this poem is called A Few Regrets. I should have said yes to the huge carp surfacing under the bridge. I should have sat on the edge of the dam at the lake much longer. I should have learned more about gravity. I should have refused the merchandising of the things that once blessed me. But when I watched the evening news, the side of a crucifix cracked open holes in the head of a man who wore no clothes. I watched the blood soak into the bare ground. I watched so long I saw the scar. I sat there dwindling inside the sound effects. I stood there caught in the parade. I joined the others saluting the flag as the dollar fell in the meek inherited dirt. Then I woke in the arms of a woman who wanted to dance all night. Her name was America. She ransacked my pockets while I bled on the sheets. Sometimes I still think I glimpse her in the fog in a magazine or on the dirty side of dollars where the father of our country sleeps. I was wild iron in those days, eager to press myself against whoever would have me. The steam rose off my chest like medicine. I thought it could cure everything. For a while, I had a girlfriend who lived in a gated community, and I didn't like this poem that much when I first wrote it. She hated it. She thought it was about her. But it's about this notion that you have this little fenced safety. It's called Little Eden. They often pause in front of the security gate, wondering if anyone is trying to follow them inside. This is a gated community. By community, I mean we're locked into mortgages and the promise of paradise. By paradise, I mean inside our little spaces, we evade each other. We covet, but we do not touch. I mean, we touch, but behind closed doors. This is not the poetry of tall grass and trees, nor the moon over the meadow while the deer doze in June. This is the poetry we now find 2 blocks from Sonic and the newly opened House of Pho, as everyone drives to Walmart and traffic backs up on the access roads. Whenever I have the urge to escape the staked palms, the water oaks, the green lawns, and the red geraniums, I take a folding chair to the gate and watch my neighbors pointing their little black boxes at the black iron bars. And if I listen closely, when the huge gate swings open, I can hear the chains engage and the great wheel turning. The last poem that I want to read is, it's in memory of my parents. When I was young, I probably spent most of my 20s writing really bad poetry about how much I hated them and what terrible people they were and how they mistreated me. And by the time I was 30, I said, Michael, you're not 15 anymore. Get over it. And I realized that all of my rage underneath all of that, of course, was the fact that no matter how I was treated, I loved them. And I've never written a poem about this. And Carolyn said that one of the pieces that she wrote was to get it out of her. And I think that's why I want to read this. When I finally drained the piss from my pen and emptied the bricks from my wagon of fears, the gulls began to scramble and leave me balanced on the edge of the building. And when I was drunk on the roof and flirted but never jumped off, the pigeons clenched crumbs in their beaks, strutting around tourists at the door of the city's museum. I wandered in circles asking myself why I had lunch with the dean of instruction at a Chinese restaurant, then squabbled like chickens and settled the check. And I knew, my impatient parents, it was for you. For you, the cracked glasses, the one eye turned backwards, the red eye of anger drunk on itself, and the mouth that was frothing, and the sea foam unsettled, unceasing, was also for you. And so was the sword-like distraction of silence, which settles its blade in my heart each day. Thank you all very much. I've enjoyed this tremendously.
Thank you to Michael and all of our featured poets and all of our open mic readers. Please stick around. It's time for our group shot. And any final words from Fran? Oh, but one more thing. I do want to say to sign up to come again next month. We'll have another reading like this on December 5th.
Hi, everyone. Okay. Fran, do you want to say something before we take the group picture? Having trouble.
Yes. No, I'm just slow. So this has been a great reading. Thank you all. I've really enjoyed this, and it's really great to be spending this time with all of you. So I do hope you'll be with us again next time. If you're not a member of Public Poetry, it would be great if you could become one, because that's how we keep going. I want to remind you about the reading on the 21st. I also will tell you that next month we'll be debuting a brand new website. So I'm pretty excited about that. And there will be all kinds of new information on it. And I'll be telling you about some really amazing things for 2021. So I look forward to seeing you all again. Thank you so very much. Now, just please turn on your video and we can do our group photo. Thanks.
Yeah, so everyone, like Fran said, it'd be great if you can turn on your video. You don't need to unmute yourself, just your video will do. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a group photo. So I will set that up right now while all of y'all get your cameras on. For our group photos, we like to go 1, 2, 3, and then say poetry because we love poetry. Yeah, so let's see. We still have a couple people who need to get their camera on.
Oh, and one more thank you to our friends at the Houston Public Library. Couldn't do it without you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm trying to see if anyone else is. Okay. So we're going to take a few photos since we have so many amazing people here. Thank you for coming. So let's go ahead and do our first round. So remember, once it's 1, 2, 3, poetry. Okay. It's ready. 1, 2, 3, poetry.
Poetry.
Okay, so let's do another round. If your camera isn't working, you probably just don't have a device that has a camera on it, which is okay. It will be fine. Fine. Okay, so everyone ready for the second round? 1, 2, 3, poetry.
Poetry.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, everybody.